The opinions expressed on the following program are strictly those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of WCZT, regional media, coastal broadcasting, personnel, or advertisers. Money Talk with Melanie, brought to you by MrCreditRepair.biz.
Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm broadcasting live from beautiful Wildwood, New Jersey. It is the second week of August. It's the second week of August, and it is hot down here at the shore, but it is lovely to be in a lovely resort town like Wildwood, New Jersey. I am happy to announce our guest this evening. Business analyst Lipton Matthews discusses capitalism is not racist. Capitalism undermines racism. It was an article that I read on the Mises Institute's website. And if you don't know about the Mises Institute, you should. If you're interested in all things economics, then you should definitely check out the Mises Institute website. And I just thought it was a really super interesting article, and I'm happy to have Lipton Matthews on as our guest this evening in the 7 o'clock hour. 7 o'clock. Let's do that better. The 8 o'clock hour, I will have Shaun Perry, who is the managing director at Perry Richey Group and Baird Private Wealth Management, and he's going to talk about finding your financial advisor, how to understand the industry and confidently hire the best. You really have to know how to pick out a great financial advisor, whether you are wealthy or just a regular person planning your finances. Having a financial advisor is very important, and you definitely want to pick out the right one. So Shaun Perry is going to come on to help us with that this evening. So I'm very excited about that. And we are indeed live on Money Talk with Melanie tonight. I've been traveling all summer, so a lot of our episodes sometimes have been recorded in advance or something like that, and I have to stop saying because that is a bad look for radio. I'm working on it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying. I have to stop saying that, but I'm really happy to be live again with you all this evening. Lots has been going on in the financial world. They just passed this bill, right? There's been several iterations of this bill. The Build Back Better bill was its original iteration. Now it's supposed to be the lower inflation bill. I think that's what it's called, something like that, which is ironic because literally when you infuse the economy with any kind of money like the government is doing, it does the opposite for inflation. It means you have more money chasing fewer goods, which causes more inflation. And organizations that do these things regularly, as far as scoring bills and deciding how effective it's going to be with what it's supposed to do, has said that it will effectively lower inflation by 0.1%. So inflation is now at 9.1%. So that's the equivalent of taking it down to about possibly 8%. And then they spent billions and billions of dollars in order to do that in typical government fashion. It's annoying, just saying. It's super annoying, and they know this. It is Economics 101. You don't put a whole bunch of money into the economy with fewer goods. It is going to cause more inflation, in my opinion. I think the whole idea that it's going to lower inflation is absolute bunk, just based on my knowledge of economics. And these people who are the Biden administration advisors should know the same, but they're acting like they don't. They're just spending money like they have a money tree in the backyard, and the money tree is called the taxpayers. That's all of us paying for this bill. I don't quite understand why they're doing it when they know better. Part of me thinks that at the risk of sounding like a conspiracy theorist, is are they doing it intentionally? What exactly is it that they're trying to do. I don't understand, because if you know the basics of economics, you know that infusing more money into the economy is not a good idea after they already did this a couple of times. And what happened? Inflation got worse. So you would think that at this point they would get it, but they don't. So that's where we are with that inflation bill. It's going to be a big bugaboo. I think it's a really bad idea, and it's just going to end up, not only is it costing taxpayers more money, but it's going to higher inflation, in my opinion, and that's never good. We're already paying top dollar, even though gas has gone down a couple of cents, maybe 60, and they're like, oh, well, that's no small thing to go down 60 cents. Well, yeah, it's not a small thing, except when you consider the fact that it's still double what it was this time last year. That's problematic. Only people who are super wealthy, who can completely absorb inflation and can just redo their budget and put less money in their investments or less money in their bank account, can afford to absorb that. Especially with, most of us, a lot of us have a budget, or at least have some theory on how much money we can spend on gas, on how much money we can spend on groceries. And this is not helpful. The government needs to do less. If you want to help, do less, government. That's all we request. It's just, please do less. And in that same vein, I read an article recently that says that Americans are piling up credit card debt as they struggle to keep up with the high cost of living, which is interesting, right? Here's why it's interesting. Because one of the fundamentals that if you're a political junkie like myself, and you watch the press briefings every chance you get, one of the things that they've been saying is, well, consumers have still been spending, so we're okay. But peel back the onion a little bit and see how they're spending. Consumers are spending on their credit cards. That is not good if debt is going up. If you are increasing your debt and it's piling up, not only are credit scores going down, which is a bad look. Yes, your credit score will definitely go down. If you spend more than 30% of your available credit, it's going to go down. That is not a good look. That has a negative effect not only on consumers, but also on the economy in general. So, according to this article on CNN, it says that U.S. household debt has surpassed $16 trillion. This is the important part, for the first time ever during the second quarter. This is according to the New York Federal Reserve. Even as borrowing costs continue to go up, meaning the interest rates, remember that we had a couple of interest rate hikes. So that means not only are people using more credit, they are paying more for that credit, because the interest rates are going up. So it's more expensive to borrow, and people are not deterred by that. They're still borrowing money. That is not a good look for the economy overall. Over this past year, credit card debt has jumped by $100 billion, or a 13% increase, which is the biggest increase in more than 20 years. Credit cards typically charge high rates when the balances aren't fully paid off. 25%. Think about that. It's $25 for every $100 that you're spending on your credit card. A lot of times we don't think of these interest rates as money, but we need to start. So for every $100 that you spend on your credit card, think of that as paying back $125 if you have a 25% interest rate on a credit card. That is a lot of money. And this is one of those indicators that the economy is not doing well as they're saying it's doing. When people have already wiped out their savings account and their emergency savings, now they're using their credit cards. In addition to the balances rising, 233 million new credit cards accounts opened during the second quarter. That's the most since 2008, according to the same New York Fed report. So you got high inflation, you got people tapping out of their savings, and you also have people borrowing money at high interest rates. None of that is good news. So what does the government do? You know what? How about another spending bill? I don't get it. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. Our guest, the first hour, will be business analyst Lipton Matthews, and he's going to discuss capitalism is not racist. Capitalism undermines racism, and I cannot wait to talk to him about that in a few minutes on the other side of the break. We'll be right back.
Money Talk with Melanie, brought to you by MrCreditRepair.biz.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. And I neglected to say during the last segment that I need to welcome our two new sponsors. You probably heard that the show was brought to you by CreditRepair.biz. That is a new sponsor of ours I'm very happy to have. And then you've probably also heard some commercials from some commercials from Tatiana Sawyer, and she is also a new sponsor that I'm pleased to have on Money Talk with Melanie. I'm very happy to have both of you this evening. So if you hear those commercials, hit up their websites, give them some love. Very valuable services that they offer. I'm very excited to have them. So I wanted to give them a special welcome aboard from Money Talk with Melanie and 98.7 The Coast. Our first guest this evening is business analyst Lipton Matthews. He's going to discuss Capitalism is not racist. Capitalism undermines racism. If you have not seen this article out and about on social media, you should check it out. It is on the Mises Institute website, MISES.com Institute. Just a fabulous, fabulous website for all things economics. So I'm very excited to have him on the show this evening. A bit about, let me make sure I get to the right place. I apologize. A bit about Lipton Matthews. He's a researcher, business analyst, and contributor to Marion West, The Federalist, American Thinker, Intellectual Takeout, Mises.org. I apologize, I said .com. Mises.org, and Imaginative Conservative. Just a really brilliant guy, but based on the writing and research that I've done on him, and I'm extraordinarily happy to have him on the show this evening. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lipton Matthews.
Hello, Melanie and listeners. I'm happy to be on your show today. I've been looking forward to it for a long time.
Yeah, so have I. That article was just awesome.
Yes, Melanie. What's interesting is that when people want to debunk the argument that capitalism is not racist, they make reference to contemporary examples. But that is an inept strategy. If you want to disprove the racism of capitalism, one must look at slave relations and economics during slavery. And during slavery, racist whites were not unwilling to employ competent blacks to the detriment of inefficient whites.
Whoa, Nelly! You're just gonna start talking and just start dropping the grenades right away. You're just gonna come on and just say that. I love it. I absolutely love that. That's brilliant. And I did not know that until I read your article. Honestly, I did not know just that tidbit of information. And when you try to have the discussion that slavery was about economics and not necessarily about race, the racism didn't really start till post-slavery. Like that's really when it kicked in. But it was about money. It was mainly about money.
Racism became the justification for slavery. So when European traders went to Africa, they met African elites and merchants who were accustomed to slavery in African societies. And by partnering with those merchants and kings, slavery became more commercial. Europeans commercialized slavery in Africa. They did not introduce slavery to Africans. Africans were already accustomed to slavery. And Africa is the most diverse continent on the planet. So in African societies, especially pre-colonial Africa, a slave was an outsider. So even if a slave was incorporated into the king group, he was still an outsider. And Africans are quite low in out-group trust. Low trust is a problem in Africa. So over 400 years ago or over 300 years ago in Africa, if you were in the business of slavery, you would not have had a problem selling strangers into slavery. And when slavery became more profitable for African elites, some monarchs started to sell their own people.
Exactly right. And we need to make this distinction, too, while we're having this kind of sensitive conversation, but an important one, which is why I wanted to have you on the show. There is a distinction between when we're talking about Africans and African American. Those are not interchangeable by any stretch of the imagination.
Not at all. Brilliant point, Melanie. As I repeated earlier, Africa is the most diverse place on the planet. In Nigeria alone, there are over 250 different tribes. And in Africa, even today, there's a strong preference for your family, your tribe, the broader kin group, the state, and then the African continent. So if you're an African American, if you decide to migrate to Africa, you are still a stranger. However, if one takes the 23andMe test seriously, and as a result you decided to do a DNA test, then you can prove that you're Igbo or from the Gold Coast. But African Americans are really strangers to Africans. Africans place a premium on history and lineage. So even today in Africa, lineage societies are still quite important. So African Americans are descendants of Africans, but they're not Africans because Africans take identity seriously.
That is 150% correct. That is 100, and I think unless you have studied the history, unless you are familiar with the culture and the background, and really familiar with the real history of this economic segment, you do not know that. But many people who are not descendants of Africa or African or African American, there are just many people who are not well informed about that, which is why I wanted to make sure that people understand that when we are talking about Africans, we're not talking about your neighbor, the black guy, or the couple next door. That is not who we're talking about. Typically, that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about Africans that born and raised in Africa, Africans, which is not the same as African Americans.
Not at all. And what's also quite hilarious is that up until even as late as 1980s, people in the former Sokoto Caliphate, that's northern Nigeria, individuals who were descendants of slaves were still experiencing discrimination. And even today, as early as around 2020, I read on the BBC's website that the Usu people in Nigeria, the descendants of the Usu slaves who were shrine slaves, even today they are still experiencing discrimination. They are denied civil rights. If you want to marry an Usu person, some people elope. There have even been suicides.
That is sad to hear.
Africans take his history seriously, and if you are a descendant of a slave, depending on the context, it could pose a problem.
Absolutely, and this is not just indicative of African countries, but this happens in other countries as well. India comes to mind.
Yeah, India,
right?
India, and also China, because the non-Western world is higher in ethnocentrism and quite low in group trust, and also low in trust more broadly. So Americans are more trusting than the Japanese. The concept of impartial trust is quite Western and also recent.
Indeed. Absolutely. So it just, the opening of your article brings out and highlights that the discrimination is not an entrenched feature of capitalism, right? But that businesses must discriminate to remain competitive. And explain what you meant by that.
Well, why not? We're talking about businesses, but why not talk about parents? If you have children, you want your children to attend the best schools so that they are going to be taught by the brightest teachers, and these schools will be managed by the best principals. So when we talk about business, the issue isn't so personal. Let's be more personal and talk about schooling. People who complain about discrimination want their children to be taught by highly educated people.
Correct. Of course.
When they're reading the newspapers, they want the writer to have a degree from Harvard. So like businesses, people also discriminate. If you don't discriminate, you're going to lose. So discrimination can either be justified or unjustified. And in business, discrimination is more likely to be justified because of the profit motive. If you discriminate based on race, you're going to lose out. Perfect example in South Africa. South African businesses became uncompetitive because of racism, as Walter Williams reminded us years ago. So discriminating against people on the basis of race is not profitable in a capitalist economy.
Of course course it is. Of course it's not. Excuse me. Of course it isn't. It's not profitable. Why would you do that? The color that's most discriminating in American capitalism is green. That is this discriminating color, and people need to understand this about the foundations of capitalism, which is why. And your article, again, check out Mises.org and look it up. Your article just really highlights it beautifully and explains it very simply, in my opinion. And you one of the things that you say in the article is that even consumers discriminate on a daily basis, although they might recognize what they're doing, they might not recognize what they're doing as actual discrimination.
Yeah, it is. Kentucky versus Wendy's. That's discrimination. But discrimination, unfortunately, has a negative connotation, but it's a positive word.
It is. You hear a phrase, people say things like, I have discriminating taste. Well, what does that mean? It means that you're separating the wheat from the chaff. It means you're separating the good from the bad. It means you're separating what the quality and the standards that I have for myself, that's discriminating, right, from probably a lower standard that somebody else might have. That's kind of the definition, right, of being discriminating.
But the joke is on the people I call wokies. The joke is on them because they're willing to discriminate on rather flippant grounds. So they will discriminate against other people because their quite anodyne perspective contradicts the official narrative. And as such, they might lose money. The research on discrimination, on identity-based discrimination, actually suggests that it is not quite profitable. Neither is it a loss. At best, it's moderate. So there isn't much to be gained by discriminating against individuals on the basis of identity politics or their anodyne philosophies. And I keep using the word anodyne because you don't have to be a racist to be a victim of discrimination.
Indeed, you don't. You don't have to be of any particular race in order to be on the receiving side of that.
You can do something as simple as even saying the minimum wage is inefficient. That could get you into trouble.
You can, because what they'll say is not only is it inefficient, but, and you hear this phrase all the time, it disproportionately affects black and brown people.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So the minimum wage has a negative impact on black and brown people. But if you're not in favor of a higher minimum wage, you're somewhat anti-working class.
Right. But not only are you anti-working class, but again, you're also a racist. Because the working class, right, is mostly black and brown people. So that's you're automatically also a racist if you're not for the working class.
But decades ago, trade unionists advocated the minimum wage because of racism. They wanted they wanted to undermine the bargaining power of blacks.
Indeed, and that's the I don't even want to use the word reverse because that's not even it. That's actually the abject policy-based racism that goes on. And as I said earlier about peeling back the onion of the most recent spending bill that was passed, you have to peel back the onion of these policies in order to understand how they really are affecting people and in what ways, and is it really, based on the color of people's skin, or is it based on something else?
Yeah. And unfortunately, so many people in the black community have been hypnotized by such nonsensical ideas. So a couple of months ago, Peter Thiel was in the news because of his account. So he invested some money into an account and made billions. A smart move. And black people online were saying, no, we need to stop this. No, learn from him.
Thank you. Amen. Do what he did. There's nothing stopping you from doing what he did. So do that.
Yeah, learn. So many blacks are consuming this garbage, and it was not always the case. After slavery in the Caribbean and in the U.S. South, blacks had a thirst for education and work.
Amen.
The revolution started long after.
That is exactly right. We're up against the break. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. We are talking to the brilliant Lipton Matthews, who is speaking to us about his article that's on the Mises Wire at Mises.org. You really should check it out. It's called Capitalism is Not Racist. Capitalism Undermines Racism. I just thought it was a super interesting topic to talk about, especially since capitalism just gets so much shade, and it shouldn't. It's beneficial for all, especially here in the United States, and I just thought it'd be great to talk to Lipton Matthews. I'm very excited to have him on this evening, and we will be back with more from Lipton Matthews on the other side of the break.
What would you say if you learned you can make a dependable income while adding incredible flexibility to your personal schedule? Sound too good to be true? It's not. Let Tatiana show you how it's possible. Ladies, this training is tailor-made for you and your busy lifestyle. Learn how you can create your own bookkeeping business that does not fit into your life but works around your life. Make more, sacrifice less, and enjoy a higher quality of life and a higher calling. Learn all of the roles, responsibilities, and more needed to earn money with bookkeeping and adding unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Are you in? Reserve your spot now by logging on to programs.tatianasor.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo. What would you say if you learned you can make a dependable income while adding incredible flexibility to your personal schedule? Sound too good to be true? It's not. Let Tatiana show you how it's possible. Ladies, this training is tailor-made for you and your busy lifestyle. Learn how you can create your own bookkeeping business that does not fit into your life but works around your life. Make more, sacrifice less, and enjoy a higher quality of life and a higher calling. Learn all of the roles, responsibilities, and more needed to earn money with bookkeeping and adding unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Are you in? Reserve your spot now by logging on to programs.tatianasor.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo.
Money Talk with Melanie, brought to you by MrCreditRepair.biz.
Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, and our guest this hour is Lipton Matthews, who, in addition to many other things, is a business analyst, and he wrote an article recently. I think this article posted in June called Capitalism is Not Racist. Capitalism Undermines Racism. And we're just having the most interesting conversation about that article because I thought it was just quite a valid point. And there are people, especially from other countries, throw a lot of shade on capitalism, which is really quite laughable in light of the way some of those other countries move, just to be honest. So one of the things that you said in the article that I was like, no one is going to want to hear that. But one of the things that you said is that if intellectual achievements of some groups are too meager for them to join the ranks of the elite, then the problem has to be solved by the minority communities.
Yes. So human capital is important, and by human capital, I am referring to know-how. So getting a degree in engineering means that you're intelligent. You exercise human capital when you file a useful patent or start a successful business. So human capital is a different variable from education. And I love to talk about the British Industrial Revolution. So the British Industrial Revolution sounds like a very old topic in history, but it's still important because on the eve of the revolution, there were other countries in Europe where people were more intellectual than the British, but the British had human capital know-how. And then after the British Industrial Revolution, where the American Industrial Revolution, and the Americans had know-how. So today people argue, oh my God, America is not doing well on peace, and not a problem. The problem is that other countries do not know how to exploit their human capital. So around 2017, INSEAD published the Intelligent Capital Index, and America was number one, and after America, it was England. So one must know how to exploit his human capital. And some groups place a higher premium on education and saving than others.
Now, you're not allowed to say that. Lipton Matthews, you are not allowed to say that out loud. You're just not.
But it's a fact of history. Some groups place a higher premium on education and investing than others. So the Chinese, Jennifer Lee, she has done research on the topic. Asians naturally they value education. They spend more time on homework. And another insurance study noted that Indians are highly educated. In Nigeria, the Igbos are known for their academic successes, and more importantly is one's responsiveness to change. Historically, not all groups have been equally responsive to change. So the Japanese during the Meiji Restoration were responsive to change. Jewish people throughout various periods in their history were also responsive to change. All cultures are not equal. Therefore, cultural leaders are important because the role of the cultural leader is really to improve the quality of his people, not to make them feel good.
Well now.
Yes.
You just said a mouthful. Oh my God, you just said a mouthful. Because I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there are some on the liberal side that do a lot of making black African Americans here, making us feel good without doing any actual work.
Yes, feel good. A feel good culture will take you nowhere. European, so Eastern Jews from Eastern Europe and white people from Eastern Europe, although these Jews are phenotypically white, when they immigrated to America, they encountered discrimination not just from Native Americans but from their own people. Why? Because their academic and professional achievements were lower. So these groups were actually reformed. They had to be socialized.
That's exactly right. So what I hear you saying, if I think I understand you correctly, is that it's really not about the color of your skin, it's about the work you're putting in.
Yes, and the role of cultural leaders. Cultural leaders should not be afraid to speak the truth. If you're lagging, one ought to improve. A laggard is just a laggard.
If you're lagging, improve. Do better.
Yes, that's just the fact of life.
But nobody is saying that. And if you do say that, then you get dragged, you get canceled, and like you can't say do more work harder, do better. You can't say that. If you say that, people get mad.
No, but that's the only way you can improve, by working harder. I have a mentor who is a retired professor and an editor. And we get along quite well, but if I submit an article and he looks at it and likes it, but it can be better, he's going to say it.
That's exactly right. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this. I'm going to deviate from the article just slightly, but I want to hear your thoughts on so there's a wealth gap between the races because of the history of America, because of the slave history that put our families behind the 8 ball. And so that's why there's this huge generational wealth gap, but particularly in black and brown communities, the wealth gap, particularly in black communities, there's this huge wealth gap because of slavery and because we didn't get the things that we were entitled to. And then some people, even some conservatives, argue that there should be things like reparations because we were put so far behind due to the history of slavery in the United States. Is that something that you co-sign or not? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, I've written several articles attacking reparations for many reasons. According to empirical studies, the legacy of discrimination does not explain the wealth gap. The wealth and income gaps are driven by the achievement gap. So on average, blacks are less educated compared to whites. Asians are more educated when compared to whites. And education impacts human capital, and human capital produces income. So if we're going to talk about the wealth or the income gap, and I'm discriminating in my use of the words because wealth is different from income.
Indeed, it certainly is. There's a huge difference between income and wealth. I think wealth has to do with how you spent your money, and income has to do with the money that you're making, if that makes any sense. Yes.
And then property is also wealth. So some people may not be rich based on their bank account, but they have assets.
Indeed. I teach in my other life, I teach economics and financial literacy. And one of the things that I tell my students is when you see a person with a big house and 2 nice cars and all this stuff, don't assume that they're wealthy, because what they may have is a lot of debt. So they are not wealthy. They may be rich because they can afford the payments on all this stuff that they have, but they are not necessarily wealthy. In fact, most wealthy people who are seriously wealthy, got real money, are not buying the flashy cars. They're not buying the expensive clothes. They're just not doing that with their money, which is part of the reason why they are wealthy and not rich.
Rich people have priorities. Poor people have poverty. This is not my quote. It's my friend. Her godmother was a prominent pastor in Jamaica, so the quote really belongs to her. No, deceased godmother.
Lipton, say it again for the folks in the back. Yeah. I'm stealing that.
Yeah, rich people have priorities. Poor people have poverty.
Well, and I would venture to say, we're not just talking about economic poverty. We're talking about educational poverty. We're talking about sometimes even spiritual poverty. When you have these generational problems that are not broken once you know how to do better, right? So
brilliant point again. Generational poverty. So your parents made errors. You also make errors, and your children, they make the same foolish errors. I notice it all the time in Jamaica. Not necessarily in my family, but in other spaces. The errors are frequently perpetuated. So your grandparents in Japan University, they could barely read and write. You were exposed to a better quality of education, yet at 20, you have 2 kids, and at 30, you can't find a job.
Exactly. So the theory is that when you know better, you're supposed to do better. And I have always argued that now many of us are walking around with whole computers in our pockets. Like, if you want to know how to budget your money, it is a Google search away. If you want to know how to get a better education, if you don't feel like you're as smart or in depth, you're a Google search away from making that happen, because you're walking around with an entire computer. You don't have to go to the library. You don't have to buy encyclopedias. Like back when I was growing up, we have a whole computer. The information is endless.
Let me cite some stats, Melanie. So I wrote another article titled "The Key to Success is Entrepreneurship, Not White-Collar Jobs," and I was specifically referring to black people. And in that article, I cited a study arguing that blacks score lower than other groups on measures of financial literacy.
Indeed.
So, yes, that's a big problem. These points were not in that article, but blacks have lower credit scores than whites, and blacks with higher credit scores still struggle to repay their loans.
Yep, and that is true.
Financial illiteracy is a problem. And blacks also spend more on consumption goods relative to other races.
That is also true. Now the question is, and this is I think where we always get in trouble, is whose fault is that? It's not our fault that that's the case. It's because of the history of slavery. It's because of all the things that the wicked white supremacists have done to us generationally, and that is why things are the way they are.
Well, that's actually not true. Again, in the period after abolition, both in the Caribbean and in the United States, blacks were interested in entrepreneurship, but those businesses were systematically destroyed by envious whites. So black people would start businesses, and envious whites would invite trouble. We have many cases of this in history. Today, we're living a different era where people are willing to encourage and invest in black businesses.
And the reason is not altruistic. The reason is because the color is green that they're interested in. And you can't avoid our money and the power of black people with money and our power as consumers. And entrepreneurs know this.
it might sound a bit strange, but the closer to slavery, it appears that blacks are more progressive. And the more we move away from slavery, they seem to be less progressive.
Indeed. That is so very true, and I'm so glad I'm having this conversation with you about this, because I've known these things based on just kind of research, but not the details that you have brought to this conversation and the many studies that you have brought to this conversation, and not only that, just really explaining the history behind it and the details behind the history. That's why I'm so happy to have you on the show today.
And before I am assuming that we're going to wrap up soon.
We are. In any moment, my producer is like over here giving me the high sign, and I'm ignoring her. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not.
Point again. I have to make this point before you go. Thank you. But Melanie, before blacks were removed from Africa and brought to what was then called the New World, they were in Africa, and Africans also have a culture of conspicuous consumption. And that culture was transferred to plantation societies.
There it is.
So the slavery argument is really shallow. Sorry.
Woo! I feel like you're not sorry though, Lipton. I'm not hearing the sorry in your voice. So
yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lipton Matthews, you should check him out on all things social media. Tell people where they can find your stuff. You will be better for it as far as learning what goes on in all things economics, and he writes quite a bit about race and how these economic things work. And like I said, you do well to follow him. So what are some places where you can be followed?
At Matthews Lipton on Twitter, and I have a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is called Lipton Matthews. So I interviewed academics on my YouTube channel, and by academics, I've interviewed really everybody, even Charles Murray.
Oh yes. I was on your. I think I subscribed. I was on your YouTube channel, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this dude!
Yeah, so
I can't believe I'm getting him on my show."
Yeah, I've interviewed mankind, cultural people, like everybody. They've all been on the show. So check out the show, and my email is low_Matthews@yahoo.com.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Lipton Matthews. Just a fabulous discussion, very informative. Thank you so very much. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We'll be back after the break.
What would you say if you learned you can make a dependable income while adding incredible flexibility to your personal schedule? Sound too good to be true? It's not. Let Tatiana show you how it's possible. Ladies, this training is tailor-made for you and your busy lifestyle. Learn how you can create your own bookkeeping business that does not fit into your life but works around your life. Make more, sacrifice less, and enjoy a higher quality of life and a higher calling. Learn all of the roles, responsibilities, and more needed to earn money with bookkeeping and adding unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Are you in? Reserve your spot now by logging on to programs.tatianasour.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo. Make money, create your own personal power, and add unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Sign up today and learn how you can make a dependable income through bookkeeping. Tatiana shows you the way. Log on to programs.tatianasour.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo.
Money Talk with Melanie, brought to you by MrCreditRepair.biz.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We are entering the second hour of the show, and if you missed the first hour, shame on you, because we had business analyst Lipton Matthews, who discussed his article that can be found on Mises.org, Capitalism is Not Racist, Capitalism Undermines Racism, and he very succinctly discussed the facts and figures behind why he said that and why he wrote that article. And it was what those of us who don't co-sign the foolishness that everything is racism have been saying for years. But he backed it up with facts, figures, and studies, which is what the Mises Institute does. And they do it so very well, all things economics. So if you haven't read that article or run into it on social media, check out Mises.org. Lipton Matthews, the article is Capitalism is Not Racist. Capitalism Undermines Racism. But if you missed the discussion with him, please be sure to check out Money Talk with Melanie as a podcast here on 98.7 The Coast's website. It'll be posted in a couple of days. And you also can subscribe anywhere where you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts. You can ask Alexa, hey, Alexa, play the latest Money Talk with Melanie. And you'll get to hear that first hour. Spotify, iHeartRadio. You can't get away from Money Talk with Melanie. If you want to be informed about all things money, do subscribe to Money Talk with Melanie. We are even on YouTube. Open a tab, click on the YouTube, play the show, and go on about your business on another tab. You will not regret it. Okay, I suppose that's enough. Also, this second hour, I want to make sure that I welcome our two new sponsors that are absolutely awesome. I want to make sure that I welcome Tatiana Sawyer, who is doing a great job of promoting her business. She has a training coming up for all things bookkeeping. If you were interested in being an entrepreneur and you were interested in becoming a bookkeeping expert, check out her website, and you can hear it during all the commercials. The website to go to, make sure you check her out. Follow her on social media. Sawyer is spelled, by the way, Tsoir. Very different spelling, but make sure that you check her out. You definitely want to do that. And then also, iFundAnyLoans.com. The one and only Robert Houston, who's the CEO of that company, has been a Money Talk with Melanie sponsor for quite some time, but this is his first since we've partnered with 98.7 The Coast. So I want to give him a shout out and make sure that you check out all of his services. Hit up iFundAnyLoans.com to see all of the things he offers. I've been working with him for a number of years now, and again, you definitely will not regret it. Our second hour guest, who's coming up in a couple of minutes, before we're going to talk about a little bit of news before we go to him. His name is Shaun Perry. He's a managing director at Perry, Richey Group and Baird Private Wealth Management. He's going to talk to us about the importance of finding your financial advisor, how to understand the industry and confidently hire the best. Finding a financial advisor that's a good one is a very good look for your finances. It's just like anybody else. Finding a good doctor, think about it as a doctor for your money, right? A financial advisor is somebody who is going to help you manage your money. And don't think it's for the wealthy. It is not. Do you make money? Do you have income? Get yourself a financial advisor. Just like you wouldn't be your own lawyer, just like you wouldn't be your own doctor, you should not be managing your finances without the proper knowledge. So finding a good financial advisor is very important. So we'll be talking to him in a couple of minutes about that. Speaking of finances and knowing where to invest your money, did you hear that Robinhood Crypto was fined $30 million by a New York regulator, and they also cut 23% of their workforce as a result? That is a big problem. If you recall, Robinhood had a big problem with some things that they were doing on their app. And if you've never heard of Robinhood, let me just give you the quick and dirty. They're really an investment app. So if you're not an expert investor, it allows the layman, if you will, to do some investing, much like kind of similar to something like Acorns. If you can take as little or as much control of your investing as possible, and Robinhood is one of those entities. But they have a cryptocurrency division, and they had to pay a hefty penalty because of engaging in what they referred to as significant anti-money laundering, cybersecurity, and consumer protection violations. Anybody who's involved in the finance industry, financial advising of any kind, one of the first things that they make you do is AMI training, which is anti-money laundering, AML training, anti-money laundering training. Like, they drill it home. They make you like re-up every year in addition to some other credentials, some other continuing education things that they make you do. The financial advising industry, and the financial industry is very heavily regulated because they don't like people, like seeing people get got. For lack of a better expression. So Robinhood is not doing well, specifically their crypto division. When you get hit with a $30 million fine, yeah, your workforce is probably going to get cut. So theirs got cut by 23% of its workforce. Just be careful what you're doing and what apps you're using, especially if you don't really know what you're doing. So that's why the conversation that's coming up with Shaun Perry is going to be very important. That's actually one of the things that a financial advisor could probably tell you. What's the best app to use if I want to do some novice investing outside of the financial advising realm? I'm guessing that they're not recommending the crypto section of Robinhood right now. I'm just saying. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. When we come back, we'll be speaking with Shaun Perry.
What would you say if you learned you can make a dependable income while adding incredible flexibility to your personal schedule? Sound too good to be true? It's not. Let Tatiana show you how it's possible. Ladies, this training is tailor-made for you and your busy lifestyle. Learn how you can create your own bookkeeping business that does not fit into your life but works around your life. Make more, sacrifice less, and enjoy a higher quality of life and a higher calling. Learn all of the roles, responsibilities, and more needed to earn money with bookkeeping and adding unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Are you in? Reserve your spot now by logging on to programs.tatianasour.com/BBA Web Reg FBGR promo. Make money, create your own personal power, and add unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Sign up today and learn how you can make a dependable income through bookkeeping. Tatiana shows you the way. Log on to programs.tatianasour.com/BBA Web Reg FBGR promo.
Money Talk with Melanie, brought to you by MrCreditRepair.biz.
Money Talk with Melanie features entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. Our guest for the second hour is Shaun Perry, Managing Director at the Perry Richey Group and the Baird Private Wealth Management Company. He's going to talk to us about how to find your financial advisor and understand the industry so that you can confidently hire the best. A bit about Shaun Perry and their company, just to introduce you, give you a little background. Their wealth management team is based in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and serves clients across the nation. Over the last 2 decades, they have strategically built a diverse, multi-generational team of professionals with varied specializations designed to deliver a core value wealth management experience. Above all else, they believe in wisdom, discipline, humility, and transparency in the wealth management process. His company has helped hundreds of clients through a wide range of life transitions, and their mission is to shed light on the biggest challenges people face when hiring a financial advisor. So I'm very excited, without further ado, to have Shaun Perry on the show this evening.
Thank you so much, Melanie. What a great introduction.
Hi, thank you. Is there anything that you'd like to tell the audience about yourself or your background?
I've been a financial advisor since I got out of college, so this is year 22 for me. So it has been my whole professional career. I've worked for a long time, but since leaving college, this has been my professional career, and I partnered up with a gentleman, and we've essentially built this team that we have now over the last 20 plus years. So it's really exciting. We love what we do, and basically have taken our experience working with clients and disseminated it into the book that my partner Richey and myself wrote.
Excellent.
It just launched on July 5th, so we're still new in this author process.
Oh, yes. It's exciting, right?
It's very exciting and also interesting too. I mean, it's been a learning experience
for sure. And is that the title of the book that I just read? What we were discussing. That's also the title of the book, correct?
You're right. Yeah, the book is called Finding Your Financial Advisor, and then the subtitle is How to Understand the Industry and Confidently Hire the Best.
Exactly, which is a good idea. And I don't know if you heard the intro at the very beginning of the hour when I talked about having you on, but what I said was, much like you wouldn't be your own lawyer or be your own doctor, you need a financial advisor, and you don't have to be rich to use a financial advisor. In fact, I would say you probably need a financial advisor more if you're not rich.
Well, we think that clients, usually come to us in some sort of transition, and that's how the book starts, is that people typically come to us because there's money in motion or there's something has happened that's added complexity to their life. And while they're in the middle of that, they're also trying to make this big decision of who to work with. And that's the question that kept coming up. It's kind of like anything. Like we heard this message for 5 years until we finally wrote the book, but it's the big question for clients was, well, how do we know what we should look for, or how do we know you're the best? So we decided to take our experience and just to give people sort of a roadmap of here's what you should look for if you're looking for an advisor. And it doesn't matter if it's us or someone in Montana or California or Iowa or New Jersey.
And it's hard to gauge, right? Because, it's hard to kind of find a good lawyer or know who's excellent at that. It's hard to do that with a doctor. And it's certainly, I would say, within the financial advising realm, that's the same thing, particularly because of how regulated that area is. And basically, not anybody can become a financial advisor, but you just have to do certain things to become a financial advisor. And are you skilled? And so you have laid out the criteria to find out the difference between a skilled financial advisor and a Bernie Madoff.
That's right. And we've provided some, there's tools out there, and we've just pointed people to the tools that are in existence. In part of the book, we talk about the minimum standards you should look for in an advisor, and there's 5 minimum standards. The first being education, so some sort of accreditation, some proof that someone is trying to continue to grow their craft, and we point to CFP, CPWA, and SEMA being 3 of the most well-known ones. But so education, a background check. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but you can look up any registered financial advisor on brokercheck.org, and you can see where they're registered, what states they're registered in. Have they had any disclosures? Has there been any complaints filed against them? And the other 3 would be what kind of services do they offer? What's their practice look like? And then how do they charge? So we're just trying to provide sort of the basic things in the book. And the book's a 60-minute read. If you're a slow reader, it's a 65-minute read. So, it's not, someone referred to it as an airplane book, something you could read on a short airplane ride. So that's what we were shooting for.
And that is perfect because people are not big readers these days.
That's right.
They're
That's
just
right.
not. And I write articles occasionally for blogs and different organizations, and they tell you, and this is so interesting, when you're writing for the public at large, to write at like an 8th grade level.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it has to be fairly simplistic, right? And succinct. And it sounds like the style of your book.
That's what we tried to do. We said this is not for the professional. It's for the average client.
Exactly. So when do you feel that most people are likely to seek financial advice? It seems like you hinted on it earlier, but are there other times when people likely seek financial advice?
Well, I think we're in one of those times now. The last 5 or 6 years, other than that 6-week period around COVID with market volatility, there's been 5 or 6 years where it's been pretty easy to be an investor. So clients have not had a real reason to change advisors. If they have somebody they're unhappy with, they have to be really unhappy to move if their account's going up 15 to 20% a year. So I think now's the time when people need advice, they need counsel. Maybe they're not getting that. So I think now is one of those times where people are looking to make a switch more than any other. And then like you said, I alluded to, death, divorce, retirement, inheritance. Those are other big times where we see people seeking advice for sometimes the first time.
Exactly. Now, do you advise those kind of emergency situations to be the time that you seek out a financial advisor, or should we probably be starting out with a financial advisor?
Oh, no, you don't want to. Yeah, you definitely would want to start now, and that way you have a plan when something does happen. I think Mike Tyson has a famous quote that, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And
indeed.
It's kind of like that, if you, when you're mourning or you've just lost your job, it's the worst time to be trying to make real clear decisions. So you're absolutely right.
Because you make emotional decisions instead of intellectual, financially based decisions, and that is a terrible time to do that. I was asked on a panel fairly recently, when do you think that you should get a financial advisor? I usually say when you get your real job. When you get your first real job, that's when you should do it. You should
at least meet with someone and get pointed in the right direction, right?
Yes, exactly. But when that first real job, when you start getting real money, especially when you're 20 or whatever, that's the time to do it, because you'll be out of that workforce by the time you're 50 if you play your cards right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
For real, I tell in my other life I teach financial lit, and I tell my students, unless you want to be 52 and up here still working like me, because I didn't have a financial advisor at 18, get on it and get yourself one.
Yeah, there's a great quote that we mentioned in the book, and there's a book that's come out in the last couple of years called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and it's one of the best books for the average client. But Morgan in that book says, your success as an investor is determined by how you respond in punctuated moments of terror, not years spent on cruise control.
Indeed.
I think that's what we're experiencing right now, and so we're just trying to lean in and provide a resource for the average client.
So what would you say are some common mistakes that you see people make when they're looking for a financial advisor? What are some things that they do wrong?
Well, I don't think they go through any sort of strategic process. You typically, it's maybe you end up working with your neighbor or somebody at the country club, and you don't go through that sort of back-end process of putting them through any kind of filter or interview process so that you can compare them to other people. On our website, one of the deliverables we have is something we created called the hiring guide, and people can sign up and get it for free. But it has a pre-meeting checklist, an interview questionnaire when you're interviewing advisors, and then it has a post-meeting scorecard. So it allows people to have a real systematic way of comparing multiple advisors if they're in this interview process of, how do they approach wisdom? What are their specializations within the team? How do they coordinate with other professionals? What's their process, wealth management process look like? How do they charge us? Do I see it or do I not see it? So there's a ton of questions in there. We've tried to provide some resources where it would make it easier for people to make an informed decision.
So it sounds very similar to a normal hiring process when an HR person or a manager is hiring anyone. That is typically the way they do it. They use a rubric of some sort that they're using and really score it.
That's right, and that's what we've done and created a 100-point scoring, with the last one being with the 10 points, 10% of it being, how do you feel? What's your gut tell you? Because I think a lot of times when we're meeting with people, especially with financial advisors like doctors or attorneys, we develop really in-depth relationships with clients, and you want to work with someone that you connect with emotionally too, so that feeling of like, do they get me? Do I get them? That's a big part of it too.
That is absolutely a big part of it. And I thought that was where you were going when you said connect emotionally, meaning not that you want somebody who makes emotional decisions, but that you want somebody who understands the way you think about money. And that's important. If they don't have your same philosophy, or at least understand your philosophy enough to service you, then that is problematic.
Absolutely.
Now, what do you think about if you already have a financial advisor and you think you might want to change? I know a few people who are going through this now, but I think part of it is because of the volatility of the market. They're not seeing quite the returns that they want. Not sure if it's, if they think that financial advisors are supposed to predict these things or not. Of course, they don't. That's not what financial advisors typically do. But what do you think would be a catalyst for looking for a new advisor if you're not happy with your current one? And actually, I want to ask you two things. What do you think are catalysts, and what do you think are not? Since I brought up, the losses that are happening in the market. Are there some things that are not real reasons to seek a new relationship?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, when you said returns, that's sort of for me, it kind of went down the list of importance. I mean, obviously they should be your returns should be within a reasonable range for the risk that you're taking on. But more importantly, are they providing you proactive engagement? Are you hearing from them regularly? Do you feel like they're helping you get a better understanding of what's going on? Are they addressing, we address something with our client base? So I'm not really an author. I mean, my day job is what's most important, and that's being a financial advisor. We have what's called a standard of care. So based on a client's life stage, we try to address certain things with them. It's kind of like if you're 50 and you go to the doctor, and it's because you're 50, you should do X, Y, and Z. And we've tried to incorporate that into our practice. It's okay, you've reached this life stage. We need to make sure we're talking about all these different topics. So it needs to be a very proactive engagement. Unfortunately, that's not really what you get most of the time. And that's why we've really tried to lean in on, there's good advisors out there. We're not saying that we're the best advisors in the whole world. We're saying there are good advisors out there. You should look for one, and we want to provide some resources to help you find them.
But certainly, and there are, best practices, right, for financial advisors, such as what you mentioned, being proactive about kind of, like they say in the medical field, screening your clients, right? You should be doing a yearly and annual, at least, screening of your clients, see how they're doing, and like you mentioned, what age they are, how aggressive they want to be based on how they're situated, and all of those things. Think of it as a doctor for your money.
Absolutely. I mean, they need to be, just like you walk into a doctor, they can tell you why you were there the last time and what you went over and what you discussed and what your scores were. It shouldn't be any different when you're dealing with other professionals.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I think that's one of the things one of the things that's come out of this, even when people ask us to sign our book, I've been signing Expect More.
Ooh.
And I think that's one of the things we've tried to really do here is just elevate what the expectations of financial advisors are.
For sure. It should not be a one-off, and then you never hear from them again.
Right. That's right.
That's for sure. So now, let's just say we take your advice and we do a background check on our financial advisor. I think you mentioned some of the red flags. Are there any other red flags that you should look for and say, no, this is not my guy?
Well, we talk about it in the book. I mean, two of the big ones are, have they changed firms on a really regular basis? Have they consistently every couple of years worked for someone different? It's not a reason maybe to necessarily not work with someone, but it's definitely a question you want to ask. Tell me more about this. Do they have disclosures against their record? Is there something on their U4, their registration, that would show you that they've had a client complaint? And maybe there's a justifiable reason for it, but it allows you to be way more informed when you're going into the meeting about that, and it allows you to address it with the individual.
Right, for sure. And so you should really think of in addition to kind of thinking of your advisor as your doctor or your your money lawyer, if you will. It's somebody who advocates for you for your finances. You refer to them as a financial advocate. Why do you use that phrase, the financial advocate?
We just think it has a stronger meaning than advisor. The word advocate just stands out. It just seems like it has more weight to it, and it's something we've been using inside of our practice. It originated with an article I had read in Harvard Business Review. There was a cancer institute on the West Coast who they had started hiring these advocates to be in their medical practice, and they were essentially a liaison between the cancer patient and the doctor. And they were there on behalf of the patient to help the patient's experience. And I really just loved that analogy. So we've employed people on our team that we call financial advocates. They sit in on the meeting, they take notes, they handle the follow-up. So we feel like when you use the term advocate, it has a weightier meaning to it than just saying advisor.
That is very good. That's excellent. That's an excellent point. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We're up against a break, so we're going to be back in a few moments with Shaun Perry.
What would you say if you learned you can make a dependable income while adding incredible flexibility to your personal schedule? Sound too good to be true? It's not. Let Tatiana show you how it's possible. Ladies, this training is tailor-made for you and your busy lifestyle. Learn how you can create your own bookkeeping business that does not fit into your life but works around your life. Make more, sacrifice less, and enjoy a higher quality of life and a higher calling. Learn all of the roles, responsibilities, and more needed to earn money with bookkeeping and adding unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Are you in? Reserve your spot now by logging on to programs.tatianasour.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo. Make money, create your own personal power, and add unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Sign up today and learn how you can make a dependable income through bookkeeping. Tatiana shows you the way. Log on to programs.tatianasour.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo. What would you say if you learned you can make a dependable income while adding incredible flexibility to your personal schedule? Sound too good to be true? It's not. Let Tatiana show you how it's possible. Ladies, this training is tailor-made for you and your busy lifestyle. Learn how you can create your own bookkeeping business that does not fit into your life but works around your life. Make more, sacrifice less, and enjoy a higher quality of life and a higher calling. Learn all of the roles, responsibilities, and more needed to earn money with bookkeeping and adding unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Are you in? Reserve your spot now by logging on to programs.tatianasour.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo.
Money Talk with Melanie, brought to you by MrCreditRepair.biz.
Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We're in the second hour, the last segment of the show. We're talking to Shaun Perry, who is speaking with us about the importance of picking a financial advisor, but also about the upcoming book, actually the book is out now, it just came out, Finding Your Financial Advisor, How to Understand the Industry and Confidently Hire the Best. Where can we pick that book up, Shaun?
Yeah, thank you. You can get the book on Amazon, and I know Best Buy and some other places. I mean, not Best Buy, Barnes & Noble, some other places, but Amazon, we've got a hardback, paperback, and Kindle version on Amazon.
Excellent, and it is really, it's really a quick read. One of the first things that I noticed in the book, it was hard hitting and it was ugly, but you said that we have to take responsibility for our own finances. I think you phrased it a bit differently, but that was essentially the vibe, was that we're responsible for our actions and our finances. Can you elaborate on that point?
Well, it's just a serious matter, and we comment a lot of times that people spend more time planning a vacation than they do talking about their finances and doing any sort of financial planning. So it's just trying to get people to be more serious about their situation and be more serious about how they decide who they're going to work with and where they're going to get guidance from.
Exactly. And I talked about last hour, one of the things that I said is that we're walking around with entire computers in our pocket. Most of us are. So there's kind of no excuse for I didn't know, right, anymore. There isn't much of an excuse for that, in my opinion, because we're working around with the information superhighway. I'm really dating myself because the interwebs has not been referred to as that in many, many years. My producer, who's, I think, 7. No, she's just young, younger than me, just looked at me like, what's the information superhighway? You're like, that's what they used to call the internet. But we have an information superhighway in our pockets, right? So we have to take responsibility for that knowledge. Like you said, you can't just go floating through life and not paying attention to your finances. But you know every detail of everything that you're doing and on your vacation and have that planned meticulously. But you don't do the same for your finances.
And like we talked about in the last segment, you're a lot of times going about this if you don't do proper planning ahead of time, you're doing it in a time when you're not thinking clearly. Or, whether it's market volatility, so you're bringing in some sort of biases, whether it's recency bias or some other sort of emotion to the decision, or you're coming out of some life change that's going to cloud your thinking too. So
That's exactly right. And nowadays, they do have classes in school. One of the things I do in my other life is teach financial lit and economics as well. I think that they should be coupled. Not all schools, a lot teach financial literacy. I think it's only required in 13 states. But many don't teach economics at all. And in my opinion, those two things should be married because you have the personal finance side, right? But then if you don't understand economics as they exist in your country or where you live, I think you're also missing the boat. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I agree completely. I mean, I've got 14, 12, and 7-year-old, and we're talking about those things at dinner tonight. We were talking about inflation, and my daughter's selling some jewelry, and she was like, I made this amount of money. And I was like, well, You didn't really make that.
Right. No, ma'am, you did not.
You've got some stuff invested in that. So let's talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So no, you're right. At any age, it makes sense to do this, but also, if you're later in life, it's not too late to take charge and use a resource like this to help you make a good decision.
Certainly, you can start today because the fact of the matter is 10 years from now, you're still going to be 10 years older. So do you want to be 10 years older having addressed what's going on with your finances, or do you still want to be 10 years older and not having addressed it with matters significantly worse?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think that you would rather the latter. So what if you are at an age where you're like, wow, I really haven't been paying attention to my finances. You were smart enough to listen to Money Talk with Melanie and Shaun Perry as a guest, and you're like, I need to take control of my finances. What would you say the first action item might be in order to make a movement in the right direction?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, the one thing that a lot of people don't know as I engage with people that are starting to plan towards retirement is when you ask them, how much money do you need on a monthly basis to live?
No one knows that.
That's not an easy question for people to answer. Even if you say, well, can you round it up? Give me a ballpark, and it's usually like, I'll get back to you on that. So starting with, it's hard to know how much you should grow your assets to when you don't know what you need them to produce.
That's exactly right. But I feel like the same reason people don't even want to think about the answer to that is the same reason why people typically don't budget, because they think that it means that I'm going to have to not have as much fun. Right? Like, who wants to talk about the future? That doesn't sound like a good time. Who wants to talk about budgeting? You mean I can't make a budget for wine? Like, oh, wait, that's just me. I'm just speaking for myself. But I think that it comes from a place of, well, wow, if I do that, I have to be responsible and probably not, spend and things like that. Well, yeah, it's called being an adult, and yes, you have to do that. And if you don't want to be a burden on society, you might want to get to work on that.
That's right.
That's just the fact. Now, once you get a financial advisor and you get advised, what should you do with that advice? Like, should you handle it like when the doctor's like, you gained a pound or two? You might want to keep an eye on that. And by keep an eye on that, I mean lose 20 pounds before you stroke out. So if you are about to have a financial stroke and your financial advisor is like, you are about to have a financial stroke, you need to get it together. How do you convince people, first of all, to do that? Is it a good idea to be responsible and follow your financial advisor's advice? Should you switch advisors? Like, how committed do you need to be when you are being advised?
Well, I think you need to be very committed. I mean, we start the book, the very first chapter, it's called Taking Ownership, and it starts with I say young because it's young to where I am now. Somebody that was in their early 50s had left a company.
That's super young. I'll be 52 next month, I'm sorry. And
right.
That just sounds really super young to me.
Yeah. So this guy had left his company, and he was spending way too much money. And we were telling him, you're spending too much. We were waving the flag. And then finally, it was just like we had to finally sit down and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to run out of money in X number of years if you keep doing this. And he just said, why didn't anybody tell me this before? How am I supposed to know how to manage this? And it was kind of like this, like I never had any, I didn't have any classes. Back to what you're talking about. You're talking about financial literacy. That's what he was saying to us. Like, I don't know. Nobody told me that this was going to happen. And I guess roundabout way of answering your question, I think you need to work with someone who's not afraid to tell you the stuff you don't want to hear. And don't switch advisors just because the messaging's bad.
Exactly.
And that happens. We've had that over the years. I mean, you do this for 20 years, you see pretty much anything, but people have left because you say you shouldn't spend as much money as you're spending. Well, it's easy to leave and go down the street where somebody will say, no, you can spend that, just because they want the account. So if you've got somebody, and you feel confident in them, then listen to what they're saying. Take their advice. I mean, that's why they're called advisors, and that's why you hire them, is to know and see stuff that you can't see on your own.
That is exactly right. And they're not emotionally attached. They're objective. And that's the other thing. They're really, looking at the numbers, doing some financial forecasting and things like that, and letting you know what your situation is. For example, people don't consider things like inflation when they're deciding how much money do I need to have in 20 years. They don't. They're like, okay, well, I make $100,000 now, and so in 20 years I'll just need $100,000. And I'm comfortable with that. It's like, no, that is not how it works.
You need $200,000.
If inflation keeps going like it is, you might need $400,000.
That's right. We have said that when a financial advisor, it's not in the book, but one of the things we've talked about over the years is a financial advisor should serve three roles, and I think this is really easy to remember. And it's guru, guide, and gladiator. And I'll explain. So guru is obviously, you should work with someone who knows what they're doing and they know stuff that you don't know. Guide, meaning they've been there before. If we've worked with hundreds of clients who've retired, so we know where the pitfalls are. We know where the road doesn't have a guardrail. We know these types of things to help guide clients. And then gladiator is the most important, and that is that we are fighting the current you for the future you.
Exactly.
And that's the big part, is trying to get people to realize that the decisions you make today are for that person you want to be down the road. And that's the hard part to get a lot of people to realize.
That is the very hard part, and like I said, there are things that people don't consider, like inflation, and that's just one thing that you need to consider, and how your money is valued now is just not going to be the same value in 20 years. It just isn't, and that's been proven repeatedly throughout history that is not going to be a thing at all. Now, you said that at one point you said that all financial advisors aren't created equal, which they certainly are not. There are some people think that there is a legal standard that like every financial advisor has to do. Now, there's a million laws that you can't break as a financial advisor because it's very heavily regulated. But what part are you speaking about when you speak to the legal standard that financial advisors go to, and people not really being held to it, and that makes all the difference?
Yeah, we talk about there's two different standards. There's sort of a best interest standard, and there's a fiduciary standard. So a best interest means that you are operating in the best interest when you're making decisions. A fiduciary standard is just a much more in-depth, greater standard that you're operating with a higher standard. You're being more full disclosure in what you're doing. There's no hidden agenda behind it. So it's from us. So that's sort of where the industry is going, and we're hoping to see it go that way more and more. Just because that way, if someone is an advisor, then they should be operating from that standard. It seems kind of obvious, right? That you should be doing what's in the best interest. That we shouldn't have to have laws to describe that, but that's unfortunately that's the case because people are just not nice anymore. So you have to make people do the right thing. We're speaking with Shaun Perry. Tell people where they can find your company to avail themselves of your services, and also, of course, where they can find the book once more. Yeah, thank you so much. So my company is called the Perry Richey Group with Baird. So our website is theperryrechegroup.com. The book is findingyourfinancialadvisor.com. And you can find us on Amazon, paperback, hardback, and Kindle version.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Shaun Perry. Lots of valuable information, and we appreciate having you as a guest so very much tonight on Money Talk with Melanie. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Great discussion. Thank you.
Yep, indeed.
What would you say if you learned you can make a dependable income while adding incredible flexibility to your personal schedule? Sound too good to be true? It's not. Let Tatiana show you how it's possible. Ladies, this training is tailor-made for you and your busy lifestyle. Learn how you can create your own bookkeeping business that does not fit into your life but works around your life. Make more, sacrifice less, and enjoy a higher quality of life and a higher calling. Learn all of the roles, responsibilities, and more needed to earn money with bookkeeping and adding unlimited flexibility to your schedule. Are you in? Reserve your spot now by logging on to programs.tatianasor.com/BBA WebReg FBGR promo.
Money Talk with Melanie, brought to you by MrCreditRepair.biz.
Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We are at the end of the hour. I want to thank my guests, Lipton Matthews and Shaun Perry. I want to thank my producer on the board this evening, Ms. Alyssa, kicking butt tonight on the boards, did a great job. I want to thank my sponsors, Tanya Sawyer, who is just fantastic. I want to thank Robert Houston, who is also fantastic, and welcome them to the Money Talk with Melanie, 98.7 The Coast sponsor family. If you want more information about that, please do email me at moneytalkwithmelanie@gmail.com, and I can get you some sponsor information as well. Be sure to tune in next Wednesday on Money Talk with Melanie, where we will have two more fabulous guests. And remember, all of this is very important because after all, it's your money.